The Trump administration is threatening to shut down the Social Security Administration in response to a temporary restraining order issued by a federal judge in Maryland that denies Elon Musk and DOGE and his affiliates from accessing personal, financial, and medical information in Social Security servers and computers unless it's anonymous and randomized. She has denied them continued access to our most sensitive, private, and personal information as a major invasion of privacy. And the response from Donald Trump and his administration, we're just going to shut down the Social Security Administration, which is what they're effectively trying to do anyway, since they're also at the same time trying to quote unquote root out fraud, which is less than 1% of the budget of Social Security, by forcing people to go on a weekly or monthly basis with an application and a piece of ID in hand to their local Social Security office to prove their identity. I'm Michael Popok. Let's talk about what's really going on here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Judge Hollander, appointed by Barack Obama, sits in Maryland in the federal court sits in Baltimore, Maryland, in the federal court there. And she's ruled in a scathing, this is how many times we have to use the word scathing, a scathing rebuke of the Trump administration, that they have provided absolutely no rationale why Elon Musk and DOGE and people in DOGE who want to apparently remain anonymous to protect their own privacy, an irony that was pointed out by the judge. So you want to protect your own privacy, but you want to destroy the privacy and have no regard for the privacy of millions of other Americans, and are accessing directly with personal identifiable information their records. For what purpose? None is provided at all. And the judge said, look, if you need this information for some sort of government efficiency review or survey, or fraud rooting out, then you can do it with anonymous data and information. But you don't need actual personal identifying information at this juncture, and you haven't showed me why you need it. The judge went further and said, you've developed a sledgehammer to kill a fly. And hoisting the Trump administration up on its own petard in order to distract from their failing policies and the fact that the economy is circling the drain, they release things about every 2 weeks that nobody cares about, but as a shiny object that MAGA media can then chase after. First, it was the Jeffrey Epstein files, which we've all seen those files already. They've come out through the criminal prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, who worked for him and helped him obtain the young girls to rape. Then it was JFK. The JFK files. Who voted for Donald Trump wanting the JFK files released? I don't know, RFK Jr.? Well, let him make a FOIA request. Why are we wasting time and money? Because it's distractive, because it tries to grab and stamp on the news cycle while Donald Trump's having a bad news day. But in the JFK files, presumably about his assassination, again with data we already had, there were 400 pieces of personal identifying information, including Social Security numbers of congressional staffers back in the 1960s. And people were upset about that. And a lot of those people are long gone and dead. And so the American people's reaction to, wait a minute, they leaked they took the black tape off the names and the personal Social Security information of people from the 60s. So the judge said in her ruling, that went over about 130 pages, she said, look how upset people were about 60-year-old data. What do you think's happening? What do you think the American people are going to feel when they know that DOGE is rooting around in the drawers of the Social Security Administration? Now, this is also consistent with what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to cut off Social Security and Medicare without telling people that he's cutting off Social Security and Medicare. Because in order to get their couple of $1 trillion in savings, they've got to look to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, and the rest. They've already attacked veterans benefits, thinking that they won't notice come the midterms or the next presidential election. Donald Trump doesn't care about the next presidential election because he's long gone. He's probably long gone after the midterms. So the way that they're quietly quietly eliminating Social Security, where 70 million people, meaning voters, rely on Social Security as their primary income source. And the way he's eliminating it is, well, there's a very small amount of fraud, less than 1%. I got an idea. And it totals about $70 billion. I mean, not nothing. I wouldn't want it sucked out of my bank account. I think I'd notice. But it's not, given the total $1 trillion of budget for the Social Security Administration, it's a relatively small problem. I mean, if a store in your local mall or shopping center lost 1% of its goods off the floor in shrinkage, they'd be thrilled because they're losing much more than that. So I'm not saying ignore it, but his solution for that is to try to, again, make it harder on the disabled and elderly people and seniors who are maybe not great with technology, making it harder on them to get the benefits to which they are entitled. So he's making people who can't do online ID identification to verify their IDs come into one of the local field offices. Now, look, has anybody gone to a local Social Security field office? I have, both for my mother and for my wife to get her first Social Security card. You thought that your local Department of Motor Vehicle was bad? Okay. The people that got fired from the Department of Motor Vehicle, I think, are working at Social Security. But I'm kidding. For those that are working hard as civil servants, I appreciate you. But it's not a fun experience. It's not a great experience. And you better have a day, of time to kill and waste waiting around for them to call your number. So now and on top of that, he's closing more than 40 field offices, 40. So he's making less field offices. He's cutting the staff at the Social Security, and he's forcing millions of people to come in on a weekly or monthly basis to identify and re-identify their identity. What does that tell you? That tells you the Trump administration wants to cut people off of their Social Security and then blame them, user error, for doing it, and not claim that he's hitting entitlements of Social Security and Medicare. Wake up, seniors and those that rely on Social Security and Medicare. Your checks that you rely on, your direct deposits, are under attack. And for Donald Trump's acting administrator for the Social Security Administration, Lee Dudick, to then say, which is the standard callous line of the Republicans, all right, I'm going to follow this order to a T, and I feel in my interpretation that we've got to cut off all access for all employees of the Social Security Administration, not just DOGE, because I interpret it, even though it's not plain English, his interpretation, I interpret it to mean that everybody's a DOGE and MUSK affiliate, including my regular employees. So I'm going to cut my regular employees off from the servers and from financial data, effectively shutting the Social Security Administration. And that's all because of the leftist radical judge. All right. First of all, that is a insane and bad faith interpretation of the judge's temporary restraining order. And it's just another way for them to delay and be able to have the talking point that a single federal judge in a single district is standing in the way of Donald Trump's policies. Yes, his insane policies to hurt America, especially and particularly in red states and rural areas. Where do people think the 70 million Americans that rely primarily on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits, where do they think they primarily live? In Trump country, where they voted for him. Making it entirely a bitter pill to swallow for those people in the electorate. Now, you have multiple ways that the Trump administration is disobeying or openly defying federal judges' orders. He's either actually doing that, missing deadlines, not making people available, even though the judges have ordered them for deposition or for testimony in court, attacking them, not in the courtroom because they're cowards, not to their face, but behind the scenes or in the public with the press secretary, with Elon Musk, with members of Congress, with the paid social media influencers who work for the White House, calling for their impeachment, saying that they're radical, that they're lunatic, that they're corrupt. Just because you don't like the decision based on an examination of law and the Constitution doesn't make them lunatics. Never did before. You notice none of the lawyers are doing this, except maybe Pam Bondi. You see none of the lawyers in their briefing are calling the judge lunatics, unhinged, corrupt. It's only outside the courtroom, trying to influence what's going on inside the courtroom. And so that's one level of disobedience and open defiance. And the other one is to have people that in the administration, the acting Social Security Administrator, Lee Dudick, look everybody in the eye and lie to the American people. I can't understand the temporary restraining order. I don't understand what it means, so I'm going to interpret it this way. I'm going to shut down the Social Security Administration and let a judge run the government. Yeah, and which by the way, he's acting Social Security Administration head. Eventually, he's going to have to go for a confirmation hearing, and he's going to have to answer as to why he's defying federal judges. Federal judges are under attack. Something that Chief Justice Roberts predicted at the beginning of the year in his State of the Judges and State of the Court address and report, and it's happened. And him stepping in and trying to get Donald Trump to back off with statements like, you really shouldn't call for impeachments of judges, you should only appeal. It was sort of weak tea, don't you think, given what these judges are up against, including death threats? So what I expect Judge Hollander to do is she's going to get this motion to clarify. She's going to say, which part of the English language of my order do you not understand? I did not tell you to shut down the administration of the Social Security Administration and then try to blame me. So she'll use these statements being made in the press against them again. And she'll reinforce her temporary restraining order, which lasts another 14 days, to allow the sides to properly brief the issues up to a preliminary injunction. And if the Trump administration doesn't like it, they can follow the lead of the Chief Justice of the United States that told them to appeal. Take it up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Maryland. Go get a 3-judge panel to rule in your favor, just like everybody else. And if you don't like the results there, then try to take it to the United States Supreme Court on an emergency writ. That's it. That's the way it's done. And all this other, BS and all this other extrajudicial outside the courthouse courtroom attacks that are being done to be distractive, to be diversionary tactics, so that people don't notice the failing Trump administration. We see the failing Trump administration. We talk about it all the time right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. I'm glad you're here. We do this kind of hot take about every hour at the intersection of law and politics in 2 places. MeidasTouch, you're here already. Hit the subscribe button. And on Legal AF, a new YouTube channel. Not so new. 6 months old now. 500,000, more than 500,000 subscribers. I do it in collaboration with MeidasTouch. I'm the curator there, and I'm the co-founder of Legal AF, the podcast at the intersection of law and politics. MeidasTouch, #1 podcast in America. But Legal AF in the top 10, not too shabby, and that's all because of you and your commitment and devotion. We are so forever indebted to our audience. It makes us get up every day and do hot takes just like this one. So until my next one, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.